Hello and welcome to the CX Files for September 25th, 2025. My name's Mark Hillary, and today I'm coming at you from Munich, Germany, where I'm here for the Oktoberfest.
And I'm coming to you from Manila in the Philippines, Mark. I will be actually in Munich in a couple of days' time, so we are literally going to almost cross paths. We'll be like ships in the night, but I certainly hope that you're enjoying the Oktoberfest vibe. I'm looking forward to it myself. Touching down in Munich is always a great point of pleasure for me, and with Oktoberfest fully in tow, I fully expect that it will have almost a cherry on the cake type vibe this time.
I'm sure it should be great. Well, it's my father's 80th birthday tomorrow, and so
Oh.
I'll be on a plane tomorrow morning, hopefully feeling okay after the delights of Oktoberfest.
Well, you're not going to believe it, but today, the 25th of September, is my dad's 91st birthday, and I am going to be raising a glass or two when I get to Munich in his honor and the 91 years that he has spent going around this planet. And a very happy birthday to your dad as well.
Thank you very much. Well, why don't you introduce the subject this week? Because this is one of your interviews, isn't it?
I had the chance to catch up with a gentleman by the name of Kwame Agyei. Now, Kwame is the founder of Appoynt, which is a BPO that does delivery out of Ghana. Now, Kwame and I connected on LinkedIn, and it was one of those situations, Mark, where I'd reached out and just introduced myself, and he messaged back very quickly, and we got on a Zoom call just to say hi and find out a little bit what was going on. Instantly liked Kwame and instantly had respect for what he was doing. He's a pure entrepreneur in every sense of the word. And what Kwame has put together with Appoynt is a series of different business service delivery elements. Ranging from some back office all the way through to customer experience, using Ghana as a baseline of operations. So we caught up to talk a little bit about his entrepreneurial journey. What are some of the lessons learned he's taken on as an entrepreneur in the outsourcing space? And he was also very candid in regards to the application of Ghana as a point of BPO delivery. And it's interesting because Kwame's got clients in different parts of the world, in the States, in the United Kingdom. And I was really fascinated with this discussion by somebody who's got such not just passion and energy, but a love for our sector. And it's something that I think we should appreciate. We should not take people like Kwame for granted, because really he is the next generation of people that it's going to keep outsourcing as not just an industry of choice, but one that's really going to be driving innovation, one that's going to be driving different ways of doing things. And quite frankly, I think we need people like Kwame because they've got an amazing story to tell that's inspirational.
It's interesting because next week on the pod we have Tracy Freeman, and Tracy, as you know, she's based in South Africa, but she's now very involved in promoting Africa continent-wide development of BPO and ITO, IT-enabled services generally. And we had a conversation recently about some of the hotspots in Africa, and Ghana was definitely included there. And I think that what's becoming important today within our environment is you can't sell just resource, contact center resource anymore. You have to be able to sort of package it with the know-how and the technology skills to be able to set up an entire customer service solution. It's a lot more complex than just plugging in an IVR and a few agents. This industry has developed so much around what technology can offer as well. So I think that we're seeing within Africa, we know of places like Egypt and South Africa that are very well developed in this market, but places like Ghana and Rwanda, for example, Kenya as well, becoming real hotspots. And I think that's driven by this kind of marriage of technology and the service industry.
100%. And Kwame has got such a background in Ghana, obviously, and understands the dynamics. But what I think is so appropriate is that he understands a lot of what you just described, Mark. What are some of those deeper elements that are required that you need to tease out to make it work as a delivery point? And that's what he's been able to do. So let's go over to our interview with Kwame Agyei, who is the founder of Appoynt, and find out a little bit more about his journey and what's going on in Ghana. I'm really delighted to be back on the CX Files today and having the chance to interview a gentleman who I've gotten to know over the course of the past few months. I'd like everyone listening to welcome Kwame Agyei, who is the CEO of Appoynt. Now, Kwame joins us from his home office in the United Kingdom. Kwame, great to see you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. As always, really lovely to connect with you, and thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
Well, look, the pleasure is ours, Kwame. And, as somebody who is an entrepreneur himself, I always like to connect with fellow entrepreneurs. And when you and I first chatted a few months back, I was really taken by the story of Appoynt and your own perspective in terms of how you got involved in the outsourcing industry and what you're doing. And I thought this would be a fantastic opportunity to communicate the Appoynt journey to our listeners, know wherever they may be around the world. So as a point of departure, what would be fantastic is if you could tell us just a little bit about yourself and what got you into the idea about setting up Appoynt as a business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I came into this industry in the most unorthodox way. My background is as an accountant, and I actually started off in digital advertising and publishing before I stepped into this BPO world. So, Appoynt is pretty much a COVID baby. We've been running the company for about 3.5 years now. And the premise behind it all was I worked in a lot of startup companies, SMEs, scale ups. And so I was always privy to budgets, P&Ls, hiring, and so forth. And at the time of COVID, when remote work was really, really booming, I thought to myself, well, as someone who was born and raised in Ghana before moving over to the UK at the age of 8, surely there must be some way of connecting the two regions together to provide professional services. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole and started leveraging my network, people I knew, friends who had businesses, and we started off very small, one tickets here and there. And that essentially led to us growing as a company and where we are now, where we're now targeting much bigger clients, trying to grow as a much bigger organization. It's been an incredible journey. I've met so many wonderful people like yourself and got to go to so many incredible places as a result of it. We at Appoynt are really trying to promote Ghana as the go-to destination for outsourcing. It's the location that everyone is asking questions about. It's the location people are interested to learn more about. And what we are saying is, hey, we have the skill sets, we have the expertise, we have great regional location, great time difference to the US and the UK, incredible capabilities, a young workforce that are incredibly intelligent. Let's do this. Like, we're capable.
Mhm.
Let's give it a shot. And so that's kind of what led me to starting the company and where we are today.
I think that's fantastic for context, Kwame. And can you talk to me a little bit about, as an entrepreneur, and I love the fact that you're coming from an accountancy background because, I mean, look, let's be frank, you understand dollars and cents, or in this case, pounds and pence. Um,
Yeah.
but what made you think from a business perspective that it was the right time to go live, to set up Appoynt and to actually make this happen when you actually got everything off the ground? Because that's a question I don't think gets asked to entrepreneurs enough. But there, it's like they say, there's never a right time to do A, B, or C, but you sort of
Yeah.
know the time. What told you it was the right time?
It was a gamble and it was based on my own hunch. You're right. As an accountant, I did have a bit of an advantage in understanding numbers and sort of general economics. And one thing that I was pretty aware of was the regions that are very well known for outsourcing, LATAM, Philippines, India, were dealing with talent wars. And therefore pricing was becoming a bit of an issue. So at that point, I was like, okay, if I can start somewhere, because where we started is fundamentally not where we're trying to end up as a company. We started off with virtual assistants, and that to me was a skill set that very capable of teaching within the region. We can help skill the agents up in Ghana very, very quickly. So it was just a huge gamble. I was like, let me give it a go, see how it goes. You need a little bit of delusion sometimes when you're stepping into these things, and a bit of faith as well. So when we started it, I looked at the general economics and said to myself, Ghana can be the next place to do this from. There aren't a lot of big players in Ghana, or many players for that fact. And therefore, there is an opportunity here to be one of the early adopters and early sort of risers in the local economy of Ghana. And therefore, I was like, hey, let me just give this a go. And here I am.
Here you are,
Here I
exactly,
am.
and I think it's wonderful. I think it's fantastic. Now, Kwame, let's talk a little bit about Appoint and what you're doing for your clients right now. When you and I caught up a few months ago, and you were giving me an overview of the firm, what I loved about it was the fact that you do have a number of core specializations. What would they be, and who would be the types of clients that you're currently servicing?
Yeah, so at this point in time, the type of clients that we service are SMBs in the US and the UK. We provide with back office support, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and customer support agents as well. That is where we believe is our sweet spot in terms of client direct. And when I want to be very specific and clear when I say client direct, because there's actually something else that we've been doing very recently, which I'll come on to in a second. But one of those reasons why we decided on the SMB market is because the bigger players at times, may only provide shared services and, may have minimum quotas in order for you to even work with them. But when we're able to get in and provide these companies a service where we can say, like, we can give you dedicated agents, we can give you dedicated account managers, we aren't part of conglomerates where we are bound by shareholder targets and board targets. Is fundamentally a business that is out there for the interest of its customers. That's why we chose that part of the region or part of the sector to support. But more so recently, which has been a very, very interesting development for us, and I did it is an interesting dynamic. We're getting more and more customers that are actually other BPOs. Because what, again, going back to the talent war that I mentioned before, other BPOs are saying, well, where else can we go? Where other regions can we look at? But the trouble with jumping into new regions is you have to know the area, you have to know the legalities of it, the
Yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah.
So we say, hey, we take all that problem away from you, and we provide you with the workforce to deliver on what exactly it is that you need for your clients. And it solves two problems. Problem number one, for the larger players and the medium-sized players, it solves a problem of stepping to a new region and not necessarily knowing the local infrastructure. We know all of that. For a point, it solves a problem of, well, it's hard to get a bid when there's so many big players in the market, so many BPOs who are always sort of competing for the same contracts and so forth. So we can scale with BPOs, and that allows us to deliver Ghana and provide Ghana as an incredible opportunity to, deliver BPO services from, and also helps other BPOs who are looking to tap into new regions, new markets, do great work for their clients too. So we've been focusing on both parts, and both parts, I can honestly say, have been very working out extremely well for us. I'm very happy about that.
I've always maintained that the SMB space is a fantastic opportunity for outsourcers that are roughly the same size. And, it's like anything. As an emerging outsourcing player like Appoint is, and as an
Mm.
entrepreneur like you are, it's great. You can speak the same language of an entrepreneur. And if you can start working with them at a relatively early stage of their organization, you'll grow together. That
Yes.
relationship will snowball. As they get bigger, you'll get bigger, and vice versa. And the relationship, it doesn't just get bigger, but it deepens. And I think that's
Yeah.
important because this is where I think a lot of the larger outsourcers, you're right, they're missing the boat in many cases because shareholder demands
Hmm.
or boardroom demands are mandating that if you don't have a minimum of 1,000 workstations to play with, well, then they don't want the business. And that's a
Yeah.
shame. I mean, it's a reality, and we get it. We understand how large scale, billion-plus-dollar companies are looking to contract. They want to contract generally with firms roughly the same size, but there's a
Yeah.
whole swath of the pie that is just being missed out on. And it's where organizations like Appoint can come in and offer some of these targeted accountancy-based services or customer support services, and doing it from a home base in a place like Ghana is all the better. Now,
Yeah. And
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't agree with you more. It's such an important thing to really double down on. I travel and go to so many conferences, and a lot of the time in the SMB market, there is always a fear and trepidation of, oh, okay, well, what happens? What does it look like? But as a fellow entrepreneur, talking to other entrepreneurs, I understand that your business is your life, right? It takes so much effort to build, it takes so much effort to sustain, it takes so much effort to grow. So speaking that language of, hey, look, I get it. I know that you have problems that you want to solve, and what you're really looking for is peace of mind. Like, let's be clear, peace of mind is so important. I can give you that, and my team can give you that, and we can deliver the work and exactly what it is that you're looking for. So yeah, these conversations I find with other entrepreneurs is a lot more about the emotions behind what they're trying to do and achieve, as opposed to the unit economics of it, which is sort of more relevant to the bigger players.
Kwame, it's an interesting dynamic, the whole concept of offshore, because I've been following this business model, and I think to a large degree, my brand has been associated with the different offshore and nearshore locations and how the dynamics play out. We're at a bit of an interesting point right now when it comes to offshore delivery or nearshore delivery, whichever the
Mm,
case may be. You might have heard that there's been some proposed legislation coming out of the United States in the last few months that would
yeah,
potentially limit or restrict organizations from doing this type of work using an offshore and nearshore business model. As somebody who's set up in Ghana and somebody who's been able to make, I'd say take full advantage of the opportunities that Ghana has to offer. How are you finding the clients when you talk to them or the prospects when you throw the concept out there of we won't be doing the work necessarily in the United States or in the UK,
yeah,
but we'll be going to not just an offshore location, but let's be frank, a more exotic one, one that's newer, that doesn't have
yeah.
necessarily the name or the cachet of a Philippines or India or South Africa.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question. The legislation is very interesting. I think it's one of those we have to wait and see how it really has an impact on the industry. My position is this: most certainly on the SMB side, that's less of a problem for us because ultimately the services we're providing 9 times out of 10 don't have the same level of restrictions when it comes to data and compliance. So therefore, I don't have concerns on the SMB side. Most certainly on the BPO side, on the larger client side, I think, and I genuinely believe this is actually an opportunity for us because if more and more clients will have to take things onshore, more and more BPO, sorry, have to take things onshore, and also at the same time having to deal with price wars in Philippines, LATAM, and India, therefore, ultimately, the BPO is going to look for cost savings wherever that may be. So I think it will affect a subset of clients, but maybe we're thinking about the healthcare industry where they're going to really tighten and double down on this. I think other industries will probably, like retail and e-commerce, might not have the same level of restrictions. So therefore, the larger players will say, well, we need to make some savings across board on our margins somewhere. Now, going back to what you're talking about, Ghana, a new location, a new exotic location where it doesn't have that same name. One of the things I think that's very interesting about all of this is during my travels, especially to the US, whenever I say to people, oh, our site's in Ghana, they actually always say, I've heard about Ghana. I just don't know much about it. Can you just tell me a little bit more? And it's really just that conversation to give, like I said before, the peace of mind to say, yeah, all the capabilities are absolutely there. And when we say to people and our customers and our prospects, why don't we just do a POC, right? We're not going to tie you down to anything long term. We can test it out, prove our capabilities. Then it becomes, okay, let me give it a shot and see how this goes. And therefore from there, we typically grow and develop and deepen the relationships with the client from there. We do have sometimes where clients are very specific, English speaking and Spanish speaking agents. We can't necessarily fulfill that in Ghana, but we do work with other BPOs and also hire people out in those regions that support and facilitate that. But as far as Ghana is concerned, I can honestly say the questions are being asked. We're starting to answer them. So I do believe in the next 3 to 5 years, we're really going to see a big ramp up in BPO services in Ghana.
I think that there's a couple of things that I want to unpack with you here.
Mm,
Personally, I've seen that type of legislation come and go over the years. It's funny. The first thing that came to my mind when I read that the senator from Arizona was proposing this was
hmm.
he's in for a tough primary fight in the fall. He must be looking to try and shore up support some way. This is
Yeah.
generally what happens with these things. A legislator will put forward an anti-offshoring bill. Now it's an anti-offshoring and anti-AI. What ends up happening is it gets debated, it gets a couple of weeks, it's 15 minutes of fame in the media, and then it goes away. It doesn't make it out of committee. And I fully
Hmm.
suspect that this is what will happen this time around. But from a more broad perspective, Kwame, what I think is important here is the fact that I'm not getting a sense in 2025 that there's that same level of hesitancy amongst different segments of the business community for offshoring. There's a good recognition out there that there are skill sets that you can tap into in different locations like Ghana or other, whether it's an emerging location or a more
Yeah.
established one, that you can take advantage of, that quite frankly, it's table stakes now. You
Hmm.
can't count on the fact to be able to find a set number of customer service agents in the States or in the UK that are going to work at a rate that's going to be commercially affordable. I mean, you're an
Yeah.
accountant, you know this better than anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that especially amongst younger entrepreneurs, there's much more of a focus on let's get this done and find the right business model, as opposed to I'm going to worry about hype cycles or legislation that might look bad on the surface of it, but really has no chance of getting through.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think legislation is always key and it's important for just general governance. But I think at times there needs to be some sort of risk factors taken involved as to what are the repercussions of forcing something through. And I think
Yeah.
this would be very tough to deliver. And the big guys are certainly going to have something to say about this, right? They're not going to take this one sitting down in the slightest. But going back to what you're saying about, people like myself and fellow entrepreneurs like myself who are trying to promote these emerging markets, it's super important to understand and recognize that the work that is required can be done at such an incredible level that it benefits all parties, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that people need to understand. And to your point, outsourcing and offshoring is growing more and more. And the appetite for it is growing more and more. And therefore, the unit economics overall basically essentially says, we can deliver great work from these regions. And those regions are then allowed to grow, develop their talent, develop their markets. Companies are able to be more competitive and pass that on to their customers. I think that's how, at times, we need to look at these sort of transactions and conversations. So, yeah, I think Ghana, again, it's really coming up. It was a tourist destination for a long time, and now and tourism typically starts off the business side of things, and
Yeah.
now it's really kicking off on the business end. So it's going to do some amazing things in the next few years.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's finish up our chat today, Kwame, by
Mm.
finding out a little bit about what advice you would give a budding outsourcing entrepreneur that's thinking about setting up on their own, whether it's in the UK or anywhere else. To date, what would be the key lessons that you've learned that you would want to impart on somebody who's looking to take a similar journey?
Yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, so many, so many learnings in the last few years that I would
Enough for a
absolutely love to
seminar. We
share.
could do a college
Yeah,
seminar.
we absolutely could. I could spend so much time talking about this because I've learned a lot. But the biggest thing I'll share is understand the capabilities of the market that you're selling. Like that is the number one thing. If you are looking to, sell tech services, we're talking software developers, full stack developers, you have to know and understand whether those regions have those capabilities. Because truthfully, getting a client isn't always the hard part. It's keeping them.
Yeah.
We're in the business of retention. And so if you're unable to have the right capabilities to deliver the work that clients require, that's always the hard part. And then subsequently from there, it's reputational damage, right? They might tell other people, okay, well, don't work with these guys because I didn't necessarily have the best experience. So to sort of unpack that one even further, I always say this: start where you personally know and understand what it is that you're selling. And if you have the teachable skills to pass on to the people who will be doing the work, that is your first point of call, because you can review work that's being done, you can pass on technical knowledge, you can pass on soft skills in terms of when they're engaging with their customers, whether it be customers on the phone, whether it be doing work for clients on projects, all these things. As long as you have the key knowledge and expertise in that area, that is a perfect place to start, and stay there until you break even on your margins, you start to make profitability. And once you have that, then you can look at exploring other service areas and other verticals. Stick with what you know. Honestly, you won't go wrong if you do.
Well, that's very sound advice from somebody who's making it happen in our space. So, Kwame Agyei, who CEO of Appoynt, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today on the CX Files. Know that you're a busy man, and the knowledge that you're able to impart to us, and as I mentioned too, especially individuals that are thinking about perhaps getting into this business on their own, I think it's fantastic. So really, thank you for having a chat with me today, and I'm sure that our listeners around the world will feel very similar.
Thank you so much, Peter. I've had a great time speaking with you, and thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.